Hey guys, this is Tauna, and today we're going to be going through the top 10 Commander Precons with Aetherdrift edition. So this is taking into account the new Aetherdrift Precons that came out. We're going to go through all the different kind of, Precons that I think you should guys should be looking at, potentially getting, especially if you are a newer player, or if you're just looking to kind of expand your decks out. So these are obviously all subjective and my opinions. They are some that are based off of strength, while others are based off of fun. Generally, all of them will want some upgrades, unless you're competing directly against other precons, and even then some of them may need a little bit of touch up before then, but most of them are going to be pretty competitive against all other precons. Generally, most decks, post 2022 in regards to precons are going to be decently good, though some are going to be needing more upgrades than others, and I try to keep this list up to date and exclude precons that are harder to find or that will cost you your firstborn if you do. So some of those are going to be later on in the more expensive category. I'll talk about, a whole bunch of honorable mentions later on, but generally each set we kind of make this list and it's really fun. I really enjoy it, and you guys seem to like it too. So make sure you guys subscribe, make sure you share the video around, because all I know is that YouTube seems to hate sharing my videos around sometimes, and this could be the last video you see from me. So you want to make sure that you subscribe to make sure you get all this kind of stuff, as well as, instant speed news. As soon as news comes out, boom, we're sharing it out with you guys. We've got fun deck techs, we've got precon coverage, we've got all that kind of stuff here. And we want to hit 25,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. Then we're going to do some huge celebrations to kind of go alongside it. I've got a big giveaway that I still got to kind of draw out for our 10K subscribers, and I'm really excited to see what we could do with 25. So let's get started with the Family Matters Precon. So this makes use of the offspring mechanic to create a lot of little dudes. Essentially, each time you cast a creature, when you've got your commander out, you can pay 2 extra to create a 1/1 copy of that. You're going to get huge value from all of those strong ETBs, enter the battlefield effects, by essentially cloning your creatures. It's a very big kind of go wide deck that is relatively simple to play, and an insane amount of ways that you're able to upgrade it and make it stronger, which I suggest you do, by the way, because you could just really kind of make this deck really cracked by adding in stronger enter the battlefield effects, or just going wider and, making more tokens. There's so many ways you can do crazy stuff with this. The secondary commander, in my opinion, is better pre-upgrading, but once you kind of do some upgrades to work with Zinnia, the face commander, it's going to be crazy. So this is Zinnia, and he has essentially gets stronger the more 1/1s you have. Sorry, not 1/1s. They just have to be base power 1. So even if they're base power 1 and then you buff them up with a banner, they're still base power 1. So it's really crazy great. He also makes it so that you've got offspring on all your creatures. And then one of the cards that you could potentially, well, not potentially, one you will find in here is the Agate Instigator, kind of like an impact tremors on a creature that you can also create 2 of with the offspring. And now you've got 2 of them. So each creature entering is pinging each opponent for 2 damage. It's really great. We've got Mutant Menace. So this is based around the rad counter mechanic from Fallout. I doubt we see this mechanic, for quite a while at least, but it is a very strong mechanic, and it's a very interesting one. So it's going to mill opponents, and then you're going to get value from it in regards to like +1/+1 counters. And there's a lot of generic support for +1/+1 counters within this, which is a theme that is used a lot within Simic, so within green and blue. So you're going to find a lot of ways to be able to upgrade this with those counters. Or if you want to go into more of the mill, there was a whole bunch of mill stuff that came out with Aetherdrift too. A couple of different cards you could find within here. Well, you will find within here. I should stop saying can find within here. We've got the Wise Mothman as our face commander here. He makes it so that each opponent gets a rad counter. That means that at the beginning of their upkeep, I believe it is, before they draw, they're going to reveal the top card of their library and mill it. And if it is a non-land, they lose a health and then lose the health and then lose a rad counter. So it just is a way for them to make sure that they're milling each upkeep essentially. And then you've got the Vexing Radgull. So this is whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they get 2 rad counters if they didn't have any rad counters before. Otherwise you proliferate, which means you get to take all your +1 counters, you get to buff them all up. All the rad counters on people, you get to buff them up to another one. It's really good. We've got quick draw. So if you want to build a spell slinger deck, so you're playing a whole bunch of instants and sorceries and stuff, this is an amazing basis for it. It plays a lot of instants and sorceries on a turn to get benefits onto your creatures by doing so. It comes with just so many of those staples though, and it can be upgraded very easily to just go insane. Especially your face commander here, Stella Lee, she goes infinite with a ham sandwich. There are so many ways to be able to untap her, and then because you tap her to copy an instant, you can copy that instant, and it goes insanely well. And then we've got other stuff in here like propaganda that helps protect your creatures and protect yourself by making it so that opponents can't attack you unless they're paying extra. So, alongside that kind of spell slinger stuff, you've got ways to be able to encourage people to not hit you because your creatures aren't huge usually within a spell slinger deck. We've got Desert Bloom, and this is probably my personal favorite precon of all time. You play a lot of lands out, and then you can sacrifice those lands to create some awesome plant people. It plays very aggressively and can be upgraded in a number of different ways. So many people underestimate this deck. When it came out, so many people looked at it and they're like, meh. But once you're going to upgrade it a little bit into a little bit more landfall and a little bit more land recursion and stuff, it's crazy. And make it more so it's got more deserts in it. So it's got a lot of stuff to do with deserts. As you'll see with our face commander here, Yuma, he makes it so that every time he enters the battlefield or attacks, you sacrifice a land. And if a desert is put into your graveyard from anywhere, so therefore, self-mill works with it, or if you discard the desert, or if you just, sacrifice it, then you're going to create this 4/2 green plant warrior. You can create so many of these plant warriors in here. And as I said before, you've got a whole bunch of landfall stuff in here. So Ancient Green Warden got reprinted in here, which is great because you can play lands from your graveyard now, as well as each time a land enters the battlefield, causes a triggered effect, you get to trigger it additional times. So, you're like Scoot Swarm will trigger twice. It's really good. We've got Virtue and Valor. Now, this one is in here because it is a relatively cheap precon, but it's relatively good. It's great for new players, and there is just so many ways to be able to upgrade it because of the fact that it's built around auras and enchantments. Auras have been around for ages. There are so many auras dating back to the start of the game, as well as each set will generally come. I don't think there's been a set that has come out in quite a while, at least that I know of, that has not come out with auras with it. So, you're going to be able to upgrade your creatures in so many different ways with all these different auras, as well as some cute critters. So we've got stuff like Alavir as the face commander here. She has, whenever she enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to create this token aura that attaches to a creature. And then anytime an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player. So there's a lot of ways that, your auras could give things flying or menace or that kind of thing to be able to get around people blocking. Not so much menace within green and white. That's more like flying and stuff. But, you've got ways to be able to bypass opponents to be able to get in and draw cards here. We've got Songbird's Blessing as an example of a card within it that has enchant creature. And then whenever that enchanted creature attacks, you get to reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an aura, and then you can put it onto the battlefield. Ooh, that is so strong because you could cheat out so many great things with that. We've got Peace Offering. Now, this is one that I will start by saying it is a bit of a more difficult deck for newer players. This is one that I would not suggest a newer player get unless you've got a lot of friends that play the game or other people who play the game that can help you out with it, because it is a group hug deck. You're going to be friendly with everyone. You're going to be handing them out cards. You're going to be handing them out stuff. And then all of a sudden you're going to be stabbing them in the back to win. It gives you give everyone stuff, mostly card draw. And there's a lot of kind of card draw stuff within it. And there's a lot of cute critters within this deck as well. As I said, it's a bit of a more difficult one because you want to politic. You want to know, who is best to give these cards to? Who is the worst idea to give these cards to? Who can I make a deal with that they're not going to attack me? It also absolutely goes ham, and it's crazy with Miss Bumbleflower because she just makes it so you're buffing up your creatures, giving them flying, and then you're swinging in over top of people, dealing huge amounts of damage. Now, I've got this deck myself, and I've upgraded into alternate win cons. So stuff like this 20-toed toad, which is you win the game if you have counters. You win the game if you draw this card and then you play it and then you put it back in your deck and then you play it again. That kind of stuff. That's the way I like this deck, and alternate win cons is just really, really fun, especially with this deck, in my opinion. We got the Eternal Might. So this is our new addition from Aetherdrift. So this is a zombie tribal deck. So it has a lot of zombies within it and some side themes of tokens where you're creating a whole bunch of zombie tokens or zombie tokens of other creatures. And then also some discard and draw stuff. So like your face commander here, he wants you to be drawing cards. That's good. We've got a lot of draw cards, and then we can discard those cards. And what comes after you discard those cards and they're in your graveyard? Well, let's just bring them back with a number of different ways to be able to do it. It comes with a great land base and all the staples you're going to need for building a zombie deck and some insane new cards, which I'll talk about in a sec. Also, the secondary commander here is potentially so strong that you're going to see him within CEDH, like competitive commander, essentially, because he's just going to be, like, so many people are exploring the crazy stuff you can do with him. So going into a couple of the new cards here, we've got Temet as our face commander. He has Vigilance and Menace, and whenever you attack, you draw a card and then discard a card. And then each time you draw a card, you're going to put +1/+1. Sorry, not put +1/+1. You know, not putting a counter on it. You're just buffing up all your zombies by +1/+1. So if you, like, for example, wheel your hand, some people were suggesting putting Windfall into this deck, for example, where you're discarding your hand and then drawing cards based off of however many cards people have. You're going to buff up your creatures so much with it. One of the new cards that I talked about, the absolutely insanely cracked one, is this Renewed Solidarity. So when it enters, you choose a creature type. Now in this deck, you're obviously going to choose zombies, but you could choose any creature type depending on what your deck is, and it's going to be crazy because at the beginning of your end step, I'm not even going to read this part because that's just icing on the top of the cake. This part here, at the beginning of your end step, for each token you created of the chosen type that entered this turn, create a token that's a copy of it. You created, say, 5 zombies. Now you got another 5. You create a zombie token of something. Boom. Now you got another zombie token of it. It is, oh, wow. This card is going to be absolutely bonkers. You know when, I don't know if you guys know because you may be newer, when a Precon comes out and there's new cards within it, some of them will end up being like, you know, $15, $20 cards. This is going to be one of those in my opinion. Now, as I said about, you know, I generally only cover 2 cards in the new deck, but I want to cover this one as well as a potential, you know, competitive commander card. It's cost 2. He has, whenever you discard a creature card, you're going to pay 2 and a blue. And then if you do, you get to create a tapped copy of that card. Oh, there are so many things that you can cheat out with this. Like, you know, this is not dependent on whatever cost that card was. You know, if you discard a 10 cost creature, boom, you can create a token copy of it for 3. It is, oh, there's some spicy stuff you're going to be able to do with him. Into the next one here, we've got Jump Scare from Duskmorn. So this is a very, very interesting take on a face-down creatures thematic. So essentially each of your creatures is going to be face down as a 2/2. There is some landfall stuff within here, a lot of landfall, nice staple stuff as well. And it's very interesting, like, to be able to upgrade this deck because you could go with more graveyard synergy. Because of the way our commander works, they have a new mechanic from the set called Manifest Dread, which means that when you do it, you look at the top 2 cards of your library, you put one face down as a 2/2 creature, and then you put the other one into your graveyard. Which means that you have some ways to be able to, you know, graveyard recur that. You can do more face down stuff, which is probably the way that I would suggest if you're a newer player especially, and more landfall where, you know, you're getting more lands out, you're doing more stuff like that. It's just a very, it's about as Simic of a deck, so green-blue of a deck as you can get, but it does it in a more interesting way than a lot of other ones. So we've got Zimone here as our face commander. She has, whenever a land you control enters, you manifest Dread. So as I said, you look at the top 2, you put one on the board as a 2/2 creature, and then the other one faced into your graveyard. That 2/2 creature you can also flip later by paying its cost, or there is, you know, if another land enters, then you get to flip something face up. You can cheat so much stuff in with this Zimone. You've also got AC here as an example of one of the cards within the deck. Just, you know, play an additional land each turn. And then also when a land enters, draw a card. This one was a reprint within here, but it was like a $20 reprint at the time. It's down a lot cheaper now, but it is a great card within this deck. Next, we've got Death Toll, another Duskmorn one that is really great. So this is a mill-based deck. So you are going to be like self-mill. You're going to be taking cards from your graveyard, putting them directly into from your deck and put them directly into your graveyard. There is a lot of reanimation within here as well. So bringing those cards from your graveyard back onto your deck. The great thing about this one is that it has a lot of nice milling cards. Generally, when they do these kind of self-mill decks or mill-based decks, there's not a lot of the mill mill cards within it, but this one had a lot of them, which is great. The other thing is there's like this side mechanic of 2 card types that can be interesting, especially with the Delirium, which is another side mechanic of it, or probably almost one of the main mechanics of it is Delirium, which is how many card types do you have within your graveyard? Do you have an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, a sorcery, an instant, etc.? And then you get to do extra stuff based off of that. So examples of cards for within it, you've got Winter, Cynical Opportunist here as our face commander. So he has Death Touch, and then whenever he attacks, you're going to mill 3 cards. And then at the beginning of your end step, you get to exile cards from your graveyard. As long as you've got exile stuff with 4 or more card types, you then get to choose one of those. It's a permanent card. So, you know, a creature, an enchantment, an artifact, etc. And then put it back onto the graveyard, back onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Now, the finality counter does mean that if it's a creature and it dies, then boom, it gets exiled, but that's okay. We can add in ways like when we're upgrading it to remove those finality counters, or even better, move those finality counters from our creatures onto our opponent's creatures. Another new card that was within this one was the Polluted Cistern / Dim Obulate. So this is a room, which means that when you cast this spell, you get to choose either side of it. Now, I'm a huge fan of any modal spell. So any spell that you can cast that has, you know, different options when you do it. And that's what these rooms are, right? You can either cast it on this side or you can cast it on this side. Now, later on, you can upgrade it to essentially have both sides by paying the other costs. So say, for example, at the start, you pay just the one on the black here to play this side. Later on, you can play the other side as well. The Polluted Cistern is great because it means that whenever you mill cards, you get to make opponents lose life. I'm a big fan of that one. We've got Graveyard Overdrive. So this is a very, very basic precon that is, so it's not very basic precon, sorry. The basic precon, the precon that you come with is a very classic kind of Jund good stuff. So red, green, black, good stuff. But it plays rather well and rather aggressively. There's a little bit of self-mill stuff similar to like the Graveyard Overdrive, similar to the Death Toll one that I just talked about. But this one does it with a slight differences than that one. And I think that both are worthwhile kind of looking at to see which one you prefer. And then you buff up your creatures based off of you milling stuff and stuff that's within your graveyard. Now, this has a small Legoif tribal. Now, Legoifs are a creature type that gets stronger based off of stuff that's in your graveyard or in everyone's graveyard. It's not the main focus of the theme, but it can be transformed into that. And that's personally what I did. And it is really, really fun because you get to, like, you know, anytime a Legoif goes into your graveyard, I'll talk about it in a sec. Anytime a Legoif is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, so whether that's you discard it or whether it gets milled into there, it then cheats itself out onto the battlefield. Really good. And also, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, so whenever you hit someone with a creature, boom, you're going to create a TaunaMTG, which is another version of the Legoifs that becomes stronger based off of stuff in graveyards. Our secondary commander is the one that I would probably suggest you use prior to doing upgrades because I think that he's just stronger. He lets you cast something from graveyards and play a land from graveyards based off of things that are being milled into there each turn. And when he attacks, he makes each person mill, including yourself, so you can play your own stuff, or you could steal stuff from opponents' graveyards, which is really fun too. He also gets stronger based off of the greatest power of creature cards within graveyards, so he could be really, really big. All right, so on to our honorable mentions. Previously, I called this extras. It's honorable mentions. Now, first up, we have Theft. Now, the reason I have these Theft decks in here is because Theft is a really good archetype if you are a newer player and you're going to be starting out. You need a little bit of a grasp on the game because you want to know what you want to cast because you're going to be stealing and looking at everybody's cards. But this allows you to be able to essentially punch above your weight because your deck's going to be like here, right? And let's say someone else has a deck that's up here because they've upgraded a bit. You get to steal their cards to be able to play them, to be able to essentially kind of, you know, cheat yourself up a bit higher. There's lots of great ways to make use of this. And this is 2 previous, you know, theft-based decks. The Mind Flayers might be harder to find because it's a little bit older, but the Grand Larceny is pretty new and you should be able to find that one. And it's got like this cool side theme of dealing combat damage, so hitting people in the face with your creatures too. These ones here are all ones that are more expensive, but really good. Now, I do have still listed on here the Lost Caverns of Ixalan 3 ones here. Those 3 are a bit cheaper at the moment. They are still going to be more expensive later on, and they are 100% going to get more expensive very soon once this current reprint cycle dies out. They have just been reprinted, so they're a bit cheaper now. Just keep that in mind that when you're watching this video, they may have gone back up, hence why I kept them in the more expensive but really good category rather than put them in the top 10, because at least these 2 would 100% be within that top 10, but they are going to get more expensive very, very soon. The Blame Game one here as well, I think that Carl of Mana must have got a reprint recently because it's gone down a little bit at the moment, but it's going to go back up as well. It's got some crazy great stuff within there, including a new card that came out with it called Trouble in Pairs that is one of the best white draw enchantments ever to exist, or almost best white draw overall. Is really great. We've got the Eldrazi Incursion, we've got the Party Time one. All of these are really great, expensive but really good. The Warhammer and Lord of the Rings ones are great too. The only one that I would suggest potentially skipping is the Lord of the Rings Elven Council one. However, even that can be upgraded to be a really fun deck, and I actually have a guide on how to upgrade that on my channel already. But overall, you know, if you are looking to spend a little bit more money, these ones here are all great, and I think that they're worth picking up. And I know that I'm going to see some comments down below from people being like, why didn't you include this precon on here? Why didn't you include that one? I didn't want to make a list of every single precon. However, there is 100% going to be more precons that could be in this more expensive but really good one. Like, for example, the Tricky Terrain one as well from Modern Horizons 3, the Tricky Terrain one, people always love that one. Personally, I haven't had a huge, love for it, but it's still a good precon and still potentially worth picking up. Now, these ones here are all great precons that have new cards or great reprints within them. However, they're not on the list because they didn't hit the top 10 and they're not expensive, but they are all potentially worth picking up depending on what you want to build. The Divine Convocation has some really great cards within it. We've got the Revenant Recon here as well. Great reprints if you're building anything that's blue and black. Just mostly black even. That's just about reanimation. We've got a bunch of card draw stuff in Deep Blue Sea. And if you're building Pirates, Ahoy Mateys has a great amount of stuff within it. And if you want to build an Edward Kenway deck, for example, this is a great basis for it. Just kind of look at the reprints within it and the price of the cards within it compared to how much you're spending for it. And then you can figure out, is it worth kind of picking it up for this? Divine Convocation, I can guarantee, is going to be, because it's got I think it's got Nesting Dovehawk within it, which is already a super duper expensive card. And this precon's going for only $30 or something. So onto my favorites that I would suggest picking up. So this is a summary, I guess. First of all is the Miracle Worker one. Now you might be questioning, why was this not in the top 10 if it's one of your favorites? That's because it's not worthy being in the top 10, I don't think. It is a great precon, but it has some troubles. Once it's upgraded, it is, really fun. And I love the idea, and I love the precon for its whole Yu-Gi-Oh! Heart of the Cards. Wow! Okay, now I get to cast this for really cheap. It's just really fun. I enjoy it a lot. It's not, I don't think, worth picking up as a top 10. However, as I said, it's one of my absolute favorites. And then these are my 3 other favorites and my picks, I guess, from the list. I did not include any that were on this more expensive, but whatever one. If I was to choose one of these, I would probably choose the Velociraptor one, but again, that's really expensive, so I probably would not suggest it. Or it's going to get really expensive. It's gone down a bit, but yeah. These 3 here are the ones that I would definitely suggest, though. I love them myself. If you guys don't enjoy them, let me know. If you do enjoy them, let me know. And what is your favorite precon as well? Also, make sure you guys, become members as well. That is where I'm going to be sharing a whole bunch of deck techs and stuff. I've been a little bit out of it the last couple months because of, Christmas, plus starting a new job, plus I've had a whole bunch of personal stuff going on that I don't want to talk about at the moment. But overall, we've got a whole bunch of decks that are there that are budget decks that roughly are around the same price as you'll be picking up for a precon, or a bit more, but they end up being so much stronger than precons that it's definitely kind of worth looking into. But don't forget to subscribe and let me know what precons you guys think should have been on the list if I missed some, or what precons you guys like and have picked up. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and goodbye.